Calling to order the February 17th meeting of the Carson City Airport Authority. Ms. Warren, would you roll call and determine a quorum?
Chair Hutter. Vice Chair Peterson.
Here.
Member Law. Here. Member Posick.
Here.
Member Shirk.
Here.
Member Stotts.
Here.
Member White.
Here.
A quorum's present.
Thank you. All right, we've circulated the minutes. Does anybody have any comments, questions on the last meeting minutes? If there's no objections, we'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. At this point, I'd like to have all the ayes approve.
Aye.
Any nays? Minutes accepted. Modification of the agenda. The chairman reserves the right to modify the agenda in order to most effectively process the agenda items. I have at this point no intentions to change anything. Public comment. Members of the public who wish to address the airport authority may speak on agendized and non-agendized matters related to the airport. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per person or topic. If your item requires extended discussion, please request the chairman to calendar the matter for a future airport authority meeting. Do we have any members of the public that would like to address the airport authority? Start the timer. Seeing none, moving into the public hearings. Number 1, discussion and possible action to approve compliance plan on aviation fuel tax revenue as required by 47 U.S.C. 47133 and FAA rules that require fuel tax revenues to return to the airport. Steve, this came to us really through you. Is there anything to add, any clarifications on this?
No, I provided you my summary in the Airport Council briefing. Just a very short version is the manager of the FAA Airports Division office pulled myself and Tim Rowe into a separate meeting when we were there on our ACIP meeting and reminded us that we are subject to filing, either proving to the FAA that all of the revenues from fuel sales come back to the airport, or having a compliance plan to make sure that that happens within 3 years. And so what you have in front of you for approval is the compliance plan that I drafted. And so I would recommend that you approve the compliance plan, and I can answer any questions you have.
Any questions from members?
And this is directed at Mr. Takis. It says staff. Who is the staff that will be addressing this issue under the motion that you proposed?
I set it up for me to send it to the FAA as the Airport Council, but the time I drafted the item, I didn't know if it'd go under airport letterhead with Tim's signature or would go out as my signature. So that means when I refer to airport staff, I'm referring to Tim, me, or the airport engineer's office.
Anyone else? Do we have any public comment on this proposal? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the authority. Is there anyone that has a motion on this?
I move we approve the compliance plan presented and authorize airport authority staff to submit it to the FAA.
Second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other comment by members of the authority? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Against? Passed. Moving to item 2, report by authority members on the terminal building inspection and proposals made to address the hazard assessment issues. This was something that came out of the last meeting. I attended, Steve was there, and Carl Hutter. We took a look at it. I don't want to speak out of court, but I would say, if anything, Carl was more adamant than even I was that the list was long of reasons to stay committed to the terminal, to repair it, and to carry forward with it than to make even a temporary relocation. We asked Tim and through himself and his staff to put some plastic tarp up there so it could stop the continuation of water coming into it. And I called a contractor. Again, this is not so much to get a quote as to find out how big is the elephant and what do we want to do from there. And I did that, and I've got a preliminary report that I can share with everyone. But at this point, we acted in accordance with the motion last month that said we would look at it. If it was in fact dangerous, then fine, we might go ahead and act on the motion to move. If it wasn't dangerous, and it was a matter of something that we could control and speed up a repair of the terminal, then that's what we should do. And that's where at least the chairman and myself came to when we were there. And you were there, right?
No, I was not there. But Tim did show it to me sometime earlier.
Okay. So that's where we're at. And I'll just give a very quick update. And I think it's something we're going to have to deal with very quickly. I got some estimates based on inspections by several contractors, roofing contractors and painters and all this sort of a thing. This is not a quote. It's a kind of a ballpark start out. To build the eaves, which apparently is a big part of the problem, the water runs right down on the inside of the wall and creates all sorts of migration problems. That's about $6,800. To paint the exterior, which could be something we do, $3,500. Plans in order to get building permits, something we're familiar with, is about $2,000. And then the interior work to repair the various ceilings and studs and joists and things that might need it is about $6,000. That comes to a little over $18,000, and we're waiting on the actual roofing quote, which will certainly be the biggest of the numbers. These numbers are for the total building, and we had asked the contractor if he could also be prepared to give it to us in bite-sized chunks in case we had to limit our outflow of cash over a certain amount of time. Could we do one eve or the other or both? I'll add, he found a couple of things up there that concern all of us. On the main center building, one of his roofing contractors took a bore down and discovered that there is no plywood or structure holding it up. There is a thin sort of, I don't even remember the name he called it, but sort of a plastic board of some sort or a foam board down there. And then it's some foam, and then who knows how many layers of tar. So structurally, where we thought maybe our problem was going to be limited to the eaves on that, the center building has got big problems. The eaves actually apparently do have some structure under their layered roof. So I have no estimate for what the roofing estimates are going to come in at, but I think this authority is going to have to confront very quickly the need for some money to get that thing done. Whether it's $30,000 total, $40,000 total, we still face the choice of having a building that's either repaired and usable or not repaired and rapidly becoming further danger and in need of being torn down or something. And we sort of thought what we heard when we met over there with Tim was the center of the building was certainly continued usable as is. It was the eaves that we were concerned about, and what we've discovered here is that's not necessarily the case. Plus which, one of the contractors reported back, we had asked Tim to put the visqueen up there, held down with blocks. The roofing contractor came back and said that it's held down now by 2x4s with screws down through it into the roof, which has now created many hundreds of new potential leaks spots, including in the center building itself, which, although it had some leak issues, I think probably it just become much worse if and when we ever take that visqueen off. So anyway, that's what I've got today, and since it's an agendized item, if anybody wants to ask questions or suggestions, that's great. But in the absence of that, what I can plan to do is to get the estimates for the complete job and report back to the authority next month. Any comments?
Yeah, I understand that, but I don't know if this is true or not. I've just heard this. Once we start with upgrading the roof and doing other things, then we are required by code to bring the entire building up to code, which means rewiring it and getting rid of the asbestos. Is that true? Is that a consideration?
That's not been the advice that I received. However, obviously, we will do what we're required to do. The $2,000 for the plans, this is from Roy, who is a very highly regarded general contractor. We can have other contractors say we're not to the point of opening for bids or doing that sort of stuff. We would certainly look at that, but I don't believe we are required to bring the building all up to code.
Okay, your numbers look pretty good, but if we add the roofing to it, it goes above that magic number where we got to start getting quotes from multiple sources. So are we ready to start doing that yet, or are we still looking to do this as a partial fix as money is acquired? That's my question.
Steve, do you want to brief us on where those numbers kick in and redirect the way we approach this?
Yeah, at 25,000, we need to get multiple bids, which probably is not that big a deal here. We would just talk to more than one contractor. At 50,000, we need to advertise it and get proposals. And so if we get above the 50,000, then that really triggers the level where it's going to delay things and it requires publication and that kind of thing. But so far, it sounds like we're still under 50, but I don't, who knows what the roof building will come back. The other thing, too, is you guys would need to vote on whether you want to do it or what portions you'd want to do, too. And as I understood, Member Peterson, one of the options is to do some of these things now and maybe do some of these things later. So maybe you end up breaking it into pieces to go forward.
Just one other, then, if we're going to proceed forward to this, do we need to authorize by vote to the manager to have him proceed to look for bids, or does the authority do it, or how are we going to do it?
No, well, you're not noticed to take any action at this meeting on this item, so obviously you couldn't vote on it right now. But if the bids came back and they were above 25,000, I would recommend that the airport manager or the vice chair or somebody go get bids from at least one other contractor, so that when you guys come back next month, you've got at least two bids to look at. Now, if it ends up being over 50,000, then I guess I would go out again and get a second bid to find out, is it really over 50,000 or is this one just over 50,000? If there's a way to do it for under 50,000, you're still not required to publish. If you're convinced that it will be over 50,000, let's suppose Mr. Houghton comes back and it's 75,000, and we talk to another contractor and they're saying, yeah, at least that much, or some other number over than 50, then at the next meeting, you would vote as to whether you want to go forward. And at that point, you would also indicate, well, at that point, if you decide to go forward, the going forward would mean to publish the notice and get bids under the state purchasing statute. So that would be the different ways it could play out.
Steve, I got a question for you. I'll get right to you. If we decide to split this into chunks, and for discussion's sake, the eaves are a total of 20,000 and the center of the building is 40,000. If we decide to approach the eaves and do the center building later, are we reasonably skirting the trigger points, or do we have to take the whole job even though it is contemplated at a future date?
If you contract it out as the whole job, even if you spread it over time, you need to comply with the statute with the $50,000. So in the example you gave, if there's a 20,000 piece and a 40,000 piece and you put them out as one job, even if you're saying, but we don't want you to do the 40,000 or the 20,000 until next year, you still would have to publish. If you send it out as different jobs, independent contracts, so you just do a contract now, you get the bids back and you just do a contract now for the one piece we're going to do now, without making a commitment to that contractor that they're going to get the rest of the deal, then I think you're safe under the 50,000. But the way the statute's written, it is the sum of all the pieces in a single job. And so you have to be somewhat careful there that you're not, not acting as a subterfuge to the statute.
Right. Fair enough. So really the deciding point is if there's two contracts that were separately let and in fact perhaps competitively bid, because that's just what we wanted to do anyway, we would be safe in our approach to not hitting that $50,000 job.
That's my understanding of the statute, yes.
Member White?
What was your $3,500 cost?
That's right. Some of the damage that we have at the building now is because apparently we've chosen simply not to renew the paint on the exterior.
Okay.
So water's migrating through the block onto the inside walls.
So
That's, again, this is the quote I got. That doesn't mean we would use him or somebody else.
So 3,500 was for exterior paint?
Yes.
What was the 6,800?
The first 6,800, Roy is telling me that based on his review of these guys, a lot of the problem is that the building has no eaves, and that any water
Okay.
that arrives up there goes to the edges and straight
Right.
down on either the outside or inside. We need some kind of eaves that get the water to drop away from the building.
Okay, as we move forward here, looking at the budget issues that we're facing, I think we really need to concentrate on the roof. And if we get a bid, I'd like to see that bid broken into 3 sections: the east end, the west end, and the center. Because what I see there, regardless of the opinion of the eaves, I think if we take care of that east end of the building, we can be in that building for a good long time.
Yeah, I can't give an expert opinion on that at this point. From what I've heard and from what I've seen, there are compounding elements that are going to get worse, and we may have to scale it, whether it be for money reasons or anything else. I will say this, I did confirm it. The work that needs to be done is all of a type throughout the building, and if we break it up into chunks, it will end up being more money and more time, because some of the expense is just a contractor getting on site with his men and his equipment and the tools, and if we say now go away and by the way come back in a month, the clock runs. So it's part of the number.
I understand that, but if we don't have a full boat of money to get it done, we need to be prepared to break it down. And that's just the way life is right now.
I agree, and I think we all anticipate that shortly there will be an agreement to put something on the agenda for action next month. We just have a limit to what we can do tonight. Ms. Law?
During the discussion, you have referred to eaves a couple times, and once I think you were talking about the eaves that will carry the water past the building and down onto the surface of the, for it to run away from the building. Then you also referred to eaves as being the extension portions on the building itself. Okay, so those are really wings rather than eaves?
Fair enough.
Okay.
Yeah, the eaves that I should be referring to is simply to get the water away from the building.
Right.
And the two
Okay.
add-ons or whatever.
So when you were talking about the eaves should be built and would cost about $6,800, those are really the eaves on the wings of the building. And the way I see it, from when I worked at a construction company, that would be an initial thing that you have to do in order to shore up this construction portion of the skeleton of the building before you actually do the roofing work. Because if you do the roofing work and then you go in and try to build those eaves, you've got an inconsistent surface, and you're going to have the same problems you have now. So the construction part has to be done really before the roofing part has to be done.
That's the way it was presented to me, and I would add, and I asked Roy, I said, are you talking about eaves on the extensions, the add-ons? He said, oh, no, he said the whole building needs it. It's
Mm-hmm. Right, I
not
understand
just-
that.
So the center circular part and everything needs
Right.
this modification.
And then in addition to that, I would assume that the $3,500 figure for the paint includes the outside sealing of that, not just a color coat, but also the sealing of the masonry units so that you don't have seepage.
Correct.
Yeah, if we put a nice roof on this, then we'll be able to reclaim the west side. Those west rooms will gain extra capacity, and that's the area where the kitchen used to be, where we had a restaurant in it before. If we were to induce somebody to put a coffee shop or something in there after we made those repairs, then, I said coffee, didn't I? Then we might be able to get some revenue from leasing it to a coffee shop or another business.
Any other member commentary at this point? I would invite members of the public to approach if you wish to add something to this. Mr. Williams, please sign in, tell us your name, explain your reason. Thank you, Mr. Williams. Are you, okay, you're off there. Okay, whoops, sorry. All right, any other member comment on this? I'm going to suggest at this point that we put onto the agenda for next month a meeting, agenda item that'll have to be crafted. I'm kind of not feeling top of my wordsmithing tonight, but to the effect to discuss the possible options and to take necessary action to decide how, where, and when to proceed with the terminal building. Tonight was just an informational agenda item, so we can't really do anything about it tonight. Just as an opinion, I'll toss out, I'm not going to be surprised if the whole roof structure to do it right, which wouldn't, I don't think we would do it if it doesn't return the building to full usability, Phil, to respond to that, whatever is required, whether that be meeting certain codes. And I could easily see it running $50,000 to $60,000 to $70,000, which means part of what we're going to be talking about next week has got to be money, because we just don't happen to have that in the bank at this point. It may also, depending on what we decide is the order of priorities, impact our ability to proceed with matching fund projects with the FAA. So that needs to be somehow entertained in this discussion next week to at least anticipate that as a problem. I see another light. Ms. Law.
The one thing I would do, if it's going to be an action agenda item or a more fully discussed item at that meeting, being a new member on the board, I don't know that I know whether there's actually a lease with the city or what that is, so I would ask our council to let us know what our relationship is with the city, since it's a city-owned building, I take it, as far as what the scope of what we can do is if we have a written contract.
It's probably best for me to respond to that right now. It's not a city-owned building, it's the Airport Authority building. All of the land at the airport is city land, and so when the law was passed that created the Airport Authority, it provided for a transfer of all the land and all the buildings and all the property to the newly created Airport Authority. However, that was not done. At the time, the Solicitor General to the United States gave us an opinion that since the taxing authority of the Airport Authority is conditioned on city Board of Supervisor approval, that if we went and transferred all the assets to the Airport Authority, we would no longer be eligible for FAA grant funding, AIP grant funding. So what we did at that time, and this was not so much me doing it, but my predecessors doing it, is they discussed options with the FAA, and the FAA recommended that we enter into a cooperative agreement with the city, where the city was still the landowner out there, but all the duties and obligations, including maintenance and operations on the airport, fell to the airport authority, which satisfies the spirit of the law that created the airport authority, also satisfies the requirements that the FAA saw for us to get funding. So the arrangement right now with the city is still the underlying landowner. However, all the duties and responsibilities with respect to the airport fall to the airport authority. And that would include maintenance of that building and maintenance of everything else that we have out there, as well as their operations. So, at one time, the city actually did own the building, because at one time, before we had an airport authority, there were leases out there that said the city owns the terminal building, but for a while it had leased it to the predecessor to Sterling Air, which was actually Carson Tahoe Hangar Inc. or something like that. And then it became Tiffany Promotions and a bunch of other things. But back then, there was this kind of odd lease with the tenant that said the city would be obligated to do repairs, major repairs, like roof and windows and things like that. But that all went away when the two things happened. One, the airport authority was formed in 1989, and all those obligations fell to the airport authority. And number two, when that lease with Carson Tahoe Tiffany Promotions entity was renegotiated with Sterling Air. And that lease was renegotiated, and at that point, that was no longer, the terminal building was no longer a portion of that lease. Instead, the terminal building just became part of the assets that the airport authority is responsible for. So I know there were some questions about that earlier, about whose responsibility. Is it really the city's responsibility to do anything? I think those thoughts were based on some old history, and pretty much all those conditions have changed. So the responsibility, the building is essentially ours, and the responsibility for its repair and operation are ours, and by ours I mean the Carson City Airport Authority.
Thank you.
Mr. White.
So, as I understand what you said a minute ago about next month's agenda, you expect to have at least two estimates on what this work is going to cost? Is that the idea?
I don't even know if we would be allowed tonight to trigger action to the airport manager or anybody else to get binding quotes. We could have those if we want to do them. My goal, based on just a meeting over there a few weeks ago, is to say, okay, how big is the problem? So we could begin to say, do we want to get a bulldozer and knock it down? Do we want to fix the roof? Do we want to close it up and move elsewhere? It wasn't so much we're on the road to fix it. I wanted to get how big is it to decide which way to jump. I think by next meeting, I could certainly have a good set of estimates that would not be in contract form, but we could go there if we want. But I think it would be enough information, plus what else we're going to be looking at, to decide what do we want to do, and then from that trigger the need for bids, quotes, publications, or what have you. But I don't see the point in getting binding quotes before we decide what is the nature that those quotes have to be. Do we need to publicize it first? In which case.
So essentially, you're going to have a pretty solid idea next month. Essentially, by next month, you're going to have a pretty solid idea what the cost of the roof repair and all this we talked about tonight. Is that correct?
That's the plan.
Okay. I would, if we're going to have those kind of solid numbers to be making a decision on, I would also like Tim next month to bring back those numbers that he previously had on temporary buildings that we talked about, 2 months ago or whatever it was. Bring those numbers back as well, because if we can get into a temporary building being set for essentially the same kind of money as fixing the roof, then I think a bulldozer is in order.
And that, I think that question of what do we want to do next is the flavor of the agenda for next month, based on those estimates. bulldozing a building is not free.
I know that.
It could well be as much money as fixing it. So, Tim, I mean, well, I tell you what, I'll ask Roy if you want. What's it cost to knock the building down and clean it up and get rid of all of the hazardous material? It gets to be a pretty multi-variable problem here pretty quickly.
And I understand that nothing is for free, and I think that's the point. We need to quit fooling around with this and talking about it and make a decision. We're either going to fix it or we're going to get out of there. It's time to move and quit talking.
Mr. Williams?
Point of information, I just got done tearing down a building similar size and construction as the Airport Authority building or the terminal building, and tearing it down and hauling the debris away was almost $30,000.
Thank you. So next month, everybody needs to come with their thoughts on this. We've had suggestions that it could be made nice enough that it could produce positive revenue, and then there's the discussion of, well, that might be too much, so we tear it down. All of this needs to be on the table, and we need to be prepared to take action next month to get things moving more quickly forward. How is the seal up there now doing? Is it kind of keeping the water under control?
The last rain, we still had some leakage in the east wing. We put a little bit more covering on it, but it hasn't rained since. We're expecting rain and snow tonight. We'll see how it looks in the morning.
If you put any more up there, I'd encourage you to go back to the cinder block approach, because any screw, nail down through the plastic and through wood and into the roof will leak. The water will pool there. It'll be a depression. That's at this point, I believe, has aggravated the problem. So,
Since the winds picked up today, we lost 3 cinder blocks off the roof. The one thing that's keeping the tarp down is basically the boards.
fair enough. It might be more cinder blocks then, because the only reason they would blow is not the wind. It would be lifting the tarp to flip it off. But again, it'll have to. You could be there a month. You could be there 3 months. So we need to keep it as contained as we can at this point. Right. I don't think we have any actions to take, so we can move on. We will all come armed for probably a lengthy meeting next month. Item 3, report by authority members and staff on meeting between Carson City Building Department officials regarding state statutes and the Carson City building codes as they relate to the Carson City Airport. I think this really, Ms. Law, you asked this meeting or this agenda item be put on here? I think.
Not that one.
No?
What I asked to be put on was your report from the meeting you guys had.
Okay, fair enough, fair enough. The meeting with Sean Keating, Member White, myself, Mr. Hutter, and Steve Takis was there. And Tim via telephone connection. He was out of town at a meeting. The plan is to have Mr. Keating come in and speak to us on some items that we identified that would be helpful to the airport and to them as well. I don't necessarily think there's a lot of benefit in going over the statutes themselves, but I'll try to give the shortest briefing I can. Their position today is that every building on the airport would have to be maintained in accordance with commercial standards. That doesn't change our position that the owner, it's between the owner and the building code people to find out what needs to be done and what permits have to be granted, but it means there's a lot fewer of them that can be done by the individual without getting a permit. The first bright light was they have a across the counter, I forget the term for it now, but
Counter approval.
Counter approval on a list of items that you can walk in. If you need plans, you take your plans to say here, and while you're standing there, they give you the building permit. And we have agreed in principle to pursue an avenue where, and this would be presented as an agenda item when he comes in, that the authority would grant a standing approval to any permit that was given by the building department under that method. These tend to be simple repairs, simple stick and wood, and you're changing out a toilet or something like that that doesn't require a lot of safety issues. That way, instead of requiring a member of the public to come up with an idea, come here and ask us, we say yes, when you get a building permit, he goes down there, he waits a month, he comes back here, then we bless it. It would be kind of one-stop shopping. He goes to the city. If it passes muster across the counter, then there would be a standing order that says we also agree. And then if it was bigger than that, it would require the longer process. So that was the first thing we identified. The second thing we identified, and this is, I hate to get too excited, there is an avenue above the building authority that we could approach them and seek to have the airport properties sort of declared a mutant, maybe a specific type of building, and either use the residential codes or some combination of the two. There is precedence for this. There are some things that are unique enough that it's neither this nor that. And the three of us have had a little banter back and forth on how we'd go about that. We've got to swim upstream a little bit to find out who is able to grant that agreement. But it would simplify everybody's life. You know, if right now, because it's a commercial, you know, if you want to hang pictures to exaggerate, you got to get a permit. We really would rather relieve our owner-operators out there of that problem. But again, that's a discussion that's going on with Mr. Keating. I'd say the goal at this point would be to have him in for the March meeting. I think we'd probably be prepared to have the across-the-counter letter ready for consideration and approval by the authority, and we will also at least have identified the avenue on getting this other letter of agreement to re-describe what the properties are. Any questions from anybody on that?
I think that covers it.
Okay. Any members of the public want to talk on this item? Nope. Moving forward.
Okay, I got a question.
Go ahead.
Using that, what did you call it, turning these things into mutant properties that would be like residential, what does that mean? That there's a possibility that people, if we went that route, that people who own hangars could live in them?
That's not at all the consideration. Title 19 would continue to govern the uses allowed out there. This would be speaking only to those things that require building construction permits or don't, period. Using the names commercial and residential is convenient out in the rest of the world because people are either in them for business purposes or they live in them. That's not our case. The goal is simply to have a more lenient list that an owner can do without getting a building permit. That's all this does, or we hope would do.
Can I respond to that just real quickly? Just to add to that, there are several laws that apply that prohibit residential use on our airport, not the least of which is one of the FAA assurances on our grants expressly states that, and Title 19 states that, and so residential use of the hangar is never going to be permitted. However, as Member Peterson pointed out at one of our earlier meetings here and to the planning or the building department folks when we were talking to them, is the hangar is really more like a garage. And whether that garage is on your house and freestanding or connected to your house, they don't treat that as commercial property. They treat that as part of your residential property, even though they don't expect you to live in your garage. In fact, most of the building codes don't allow you to live into a garage. So that's part of the argument why this is really a hybrid. It's something in between commercial and residential, and maybe it deserves a special categorization, or maybe it should just be handled under the residential rules because it's closer to those than the commercial rules. Now, this applies to the storage-only hangars. Certainly, hangars where you've got a full-service FBO, their business is being conducted there, the commercial codes would apply. And I think it was the opinion of Sean Keating and Lee Plemmel, I could be wrong, but I can look at my notes. It was their opinion that the person we needed to talk to was the district attorney in terms of interpretation of which rules should apply to the airport. And we do have, Tim and I have a meeting with the DA next week, next Thursday, and so that may be one of the topics we can talk to him about.
Well, would it take a lot of legislation and changes in the legislature, that kind of thing, in order to turn these properties into hermaphrodites?
If you're referring to the residential commercial distinction, no, it shouldn't be a legislative change. Well, I mean, if the DA says that they can't see a way to do it, then I guess our next step would be a legislative change. If you're referring to a combination of using it for aircraft storage and living in it, that ain't going to happen in our lifetime. The federal laws has been that way for a long time, and I just don't see our body changing that. They're very specific. If you look at other airports like Dayton, where they've got houses off the airport, they do not get federal funds. They're never going to get federal funds. They knew that going in. These other airports that you see where they have houses on the airports, they don't get federal funding. They're not part of the national NIPIAS, the NIPIAS airports, the National Integrated System of Airports.
Just to add to this a little bit, there was one more item that came up. I'll back up a little bit. At present, all of the buildings are considered to be commercial. Therefore, almost everything that is done inside of them or to them requires a building permit, and has always. This has not changed by any action of the authority. All we've done is clarify that it's up to the owner to determine when a permit is required and to get it so he's legal. Mr. Keating pointed out that they have, it's their goal not to enforce and punish. Their goal is to make sure there's safe structures out there. So they have what is called an as-built permit. And an owner could go in and say, hey, I bought this hangar and it's got this stuff, but I don't see that it's permitted. And as long as he provided the documents that are required, they would grant him a permit for a structure that already existed. So our goal here is to make it easy for our owners to comply and to be safe and to not have it be too much burdened with time to get there. Anyway, just to sum that up then, I would anticipate an agenda item coming out fairly soon for the March meeting that would have Mr. Keating down here to take this to the next step and clarify how they will help our owners comply and to be safe, and also hopefully to report on our progress with perhaps having them redefined through a letter of agreement with whoever the authority is. Any other comments? Also not an action item. Moving on. Airport engineers report.
All right, gentlemen, as stated in the briefing from last week, we have the North Apron project out for bids right now. Next Wednesday on the 24th, we will be having our pre-bid meeting. We have 7 contractors who have requested plans from us so far, so I think we're going to have a good mix of bids coming through. And then the bid opening will be on Friday the 4th, 2 weeks from this Friday. And then once that occurs, we will have more information for you as to the total cost of the project. Any questions? All right, thanks.
Airport managers report.
Only a couple real quick items. The damage that was caused to the fence and the kitchen hanger a couple weeks ago on the 4th have been cleaned up except for the kitchen hanger. The fence was repaired yesterday, and so we're back in business except for Rhonda Kitchen is working to have her insurance take care of it. However, it doesn't look like we're going to get any remediation because of the nature of the accident. It was a car thief who stole a truck and used that truck not only to kill himself, but to damage the airport. I've talked to the city, I've talked to the sheriff, there's no remediation for us. So we are stuck with the bill, and Rhonda also.
Have you had a conversation with the owner of the truck's insurance company?
I have not. I do not know that information. When I contacted the sheriff, got the case number, they told me that the insurance, because the truck was used as a result or in a crime, even though it was stolen, the owner of that truck, he's fine because it was stolen. But because it was used in the commission of a crime, basically, that's not covered.
And that may well be right. My understanding of insurance, which I'll defer to Steve on this, the owner ultimately is liable for what happens through that truck. Now, was he negligent? Did he leave the keys in it? Was it parked without being secured? There's a lot of ways to track back upstream to an owner that somehow his vehicle, which has to be covered with liability insurance, ended up costing us some money. Steve, do you know if a stolen vehicle would excuse the owner and the insurance company from covering it?
I honestly just don't know. I'm not that up on the insurance law, but I like your argument, and it's certainly worth pursuing. It may work.
So at the very least, I'd like to hear that you've talked to and their insurance company is going to say no. So it may be that we need our attorney to talk to the insurance company. They're less likely to say no to an attorney to call them. And so however we find out, maybe you can help find out who the owner is, find out who the insurance carrier is, let them know that we have a bill as a result of damage created by that truck.
I'll do that information. I've got the case number and file at the office. I'll do the diligent research, find that out, and talk to the Sheriff's Department. Moving on with that, we're back in business on Taxiway Delta after somebody left helicopter parts strewn around the north side of the taxiway. But it's all been cleaned up and regraded, and it ends well, mostly. And that's really all I have, unless there's some questions.
Thank you, Tim. Legal counsel's report.
I don't have anything. I just want to add one thing, though, on that insurance thing. I wouldn't just call and find out and ask the insurance company. What I would do is, once you find out who they are, send them a letter with a claim, just saying the following damages occurred as a result of this accident. We're requesting that you pay the amount, or we demand that you pay the amount. And I can always help you with that, too.
Yeah, I was going to ask if to confer with you on that, sir.
In the past, whenever I've dealt with insurance companies, the conversation got real short when I said, hold on, here's my attorney. So that's when they know you're serious.
One other thing about that, I do have a meeting. I've been busy this week, but I've called Nevada Insurance to meet with them Monday to see if we can add to our policy to protect ourselves from incidents like this. I don't know if that'll work, but I'm going to talk to them, see what it would take, what the premium would be, and if it's too much, then I'll bring it to the authority for that request.
I mean, that just jogged my memory, too. I think all of our tenants are required to have hangar keepers insurance, which may actually protect us. You might have to check with Rhonda and find out who her carrier is, but I'd be inclined to file a claim with them, too.
Treasurer's report.
Yeah, this is for Tim. I don't know, maybe I missed this, but do you have a total cost to make all those repairs yet?
Yeah, we called ServPro because we were told by the Sheriff's Department that you had to have a biohazard mitigation crew, and ServPro came to mind. There's one other up in Reno, $2,750. It was cheaper to repair the fence at $1,400. So yeah, we've got had a pretty hefty bill just for the biohazard cleanup.
Do you have the fence charge yet?
Yeah, $1,400, and it's been completed. It was fixed yesterday.
Anybody else for manager? We were actually finishing with Steve. Treasurer's report.
As of January 29, 2016, we have a beginning balance of $6,974.95, deposits of $29,309.85. We spent $55,553.36 and a balance of $22,784.53 on hand. Checkbook and savings, $588,664.48. Last month, we had some news that we had some unexpected expenses, I've looked into that. It's not going to run us into a deficit. We'll still finish with the appropriate year-end fund balances due to some pretty good rock sales in the last few months. That's going to be able to carry us through. But going forward, we are going to have a pretty substantial readjustment in our budget. We're in the beginning phases of building that budget at this point, and we'll just have to take care of it with the way we build the budget next time around.
Thank you. Report from authority members. Mr. Stotts. Mr. Posick? Not here. Madam Law?
No, sir.
Mr. Shirk? And we've had Mr. White.
No, sir.
I'm going for a new record. Last chance for the public. Anybody care to approach the mic and share their thoughts with us? Cool. In addition to the ones we've discussed, does anybody have agenda items they'd like to see on the next meeting?
I actually have, the amendment to Title 19 on the traffic pattern, but I give it to you with a caveat. Our meeting next month is the 16th of March, and I will be out of town and unable to come to that meeting. I know that the chairman had made a request that we might move the date of that meeting. I don't know if...
He's not going to be here either.
Okay.
So there was a request from him, which I just figured to wait till we got to this point. Do we want to move it? One day or the other, either way?
And it's not a vote thing. I think it's more like, pardon me? Yeah, you can't make a vote on it, but I think what you can do, acting Mr. Chairman, is you can propose a date and see if you'll have a quorum. Just ask the other members if they can make it.
And we can meet in our leaky terminal, is that right?
Yeah, we could. In fact, given that we're discussing the terminal repairs, it might make sense to meet in there.
Okay, hang on a second. Can we see a show of hands of people who cannot make it on that Thursday, the 17th, the day? That's the same?
That's the same thing. I don't think you can do that show of hands, can we?
Well,
We're trying to find out if we can- if we
we're
have a quorum.
we're not taking action. We're just looking to see if we're going to have a quorum.
If we would have a quorum.
Yeah, so I think we can do that.
You actually talk about meeting in the terminal.
Right,
Yeah.
Okay.
on the 7th, because this building, we just have to assume it's all booked.
Yeah,
It is booked on that day.
Right.
yeah, this building is generally booked.
I can make it on either the 15th or the 17th. I'm just recommending a Thursday.
I'm not here on the 15th. I mean, it's more important for you guys to be here than me,
Right.
but
Are you available on the 17th?
yes,
Okay.
I'm coming back on the 16th.
Anybody at this end have a problem moving it to the next day?
I'm on vacation that whole week.
So you're going to be gone anyway that week? Okay.
We start
Is it the third Thursday?
Yes.
Yes.
No, can't make it. I don't know how long the board of supervisors.
Yeah, that's right, you have Board of Supervisors.
How about Tuesday the 15th? The day before our regular meeting.
Will Carl be here for that?
I don't.
The message he sent me is the 16th is the only day he can't make it. And if we have a quorum, we can still meet here, we can do that. He just would like to participate, he wants to be here.
It'd be nice to meet at the airport, so.
Right,
Let's just keep it on the 16th then.
well,
I think I can make it. I think I can do it.
15th?
16th.
I'm sorry?
What date are you?
The 15th is what I'm asking to see if you guys can make it. You
That's
could-
a Tuesday.
I can make it.
That's a Tuesday.
It's fine with me.
And Mr. White, you can?
I can be here.
Okay. And I know you're going to be gone, but you're okay for the 15th?
I'm good with all the days.
All day. I get you.
Steve, are you good for the 15th?
I am not. I am not here on the
okay.
15th. I don't get back until about midnight on the 16th, so.
I see.
And so I think the other option that Carl had kicked out was just kicking it back a week to the 23rd instead of the 16th. Is that right? I can't remember.
I don't remember.
But that might allow Steve Posick, you're not going to be back the following week, or no?
I'll be back the following week, yeah.
Yeah,
Well, it looks
Can we
like,
postpone it a whole week?
sure. You can set it whenever you guys want to.
Why don't we take a poll on email?
Mr. Vice Chair, we may have a problem with Tamar and a recording secretary. She's going to look into it, see if someone can replace her, but right now she can't do it.
which day?
Tuesday, the 15th.
Here's what I propose to do. we're not deliberating an element. So I would like to get with Carl and you and the others affected and come up with a list of dates in priority order and circulate the email and see which one gets the most number of votes.
That would work fine.
I'll take care of it. That's mine. Fair enough. Where are we? Yes, absolutely. No, it'll be everybody. That's
Secretary and recorder.
okay. Any other? Oh, I had another agenda item that was brought up earlier, which is to discuss removing the speed bumps. That was recommended, and I would like to include that on the agenda for next month, so we can possibly take some action on that. Of course, we can all add agenda items throughout the month. That leads us to everybody's favorite item, N.
Second.
All passed, we're out of here.
Okay.
Before 7.